So as part of my casual art series, I'm going to do some how to draw videos. Now first of all we're going to start by drawing circles, and there's a lot of ways of doing this. One of the ways most often recommended is to actually put your fingers or part of your hand on the paper and rotate the paper. However, this is not always usable for a lot of different reasons. Now to start with, if you've got something that's nice and intricate and you don't want to disturb underneath the place where you want to put the circle, and you use that method, then as you can see, when you rotate the paper, the obvious thing happens and you smudge the part of the drawing that you want to preserve. Now you can try putting another sheet of paper underneath your hand, but that makes things incredibly difficult because then you can't contain the paper in one motion. Also, what happens if you want to draw on a wall? You can't very well turn a wall round if you're doing a mural. There's just lots of reasons for not doing this. Now here's the way, given if I didn't have a set of compasses, because normally I'd use a pair of compasses, it's not cheating. Every artist since Michelangelo has used compasses and rulers. But first draw a centre. This is where your circle is going to be. Then take a piece of paper, and this method has been used by all of the great masters for circle drawing. Believe it or not, large circles they didn't draw freehand. It's practically impossible. Small circles yes, large circles no. I'll cover small circles in a minute. Now just decide how big you actually want your circle to be and mark the paper, because essentially you're going to use this as a compass. And what I like to do is put a small mark as well at one end and a little dot in the corner so I can easily find the corner. And the reason for this is you might want to draw more than one circle this size on a page or on an object, and all you do is you just measure off a series of dots. And I like to start with the 4/4 or roughly, doesn't matter, you don't have to be too accurate with this. And the more dots you put on the better, and I'll show you that quite deliberately in a minute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 8 dots. As you can see, it doesn't take very long. Incidentally, if you want to know who I am to be teaching how to draw, you can look on my Facebook page and get an idea of exactly the sort of thing that I normally do. And drawing is the foundation of painting. And the link to my Facebook page is on the bottom. Now I know this looks a bit like an oval, but trust me, it's not. It's just distortion from the camera. And now some of these I'm going to fill the centres in, not all of them. So this is like now 1/16. And you can go as nuts with this as you like. You can put 100 dots in if you wish, and the more dots you put in, the more precise your drawn circle will be. The fewer, the less precise. So if you're drawing something that just has to be roughly circular and it doesn't really matter, then don't put many dots in. If you're drawing something that it really matters, then put loads in. So as you can see down here, I've put in quite a few dots, and I've got a very good approximation of a circle. When you get to where the dots are far out, you tend to flatten out. As you can see, you tend to wind up drawing lines between the dots, and this is exactly the way a computer plotter plots out a circle. It just plots out loads of dots. So there you go. And the more dots the better, the more regular your circle is going to be. So I could have put in more dots between there and there. If there's a bit you don't like, of course, you can always rub it out and do it again. Not a problem with pencil, but with paint, or God forbid something else, it could be awful. Right, now spirals. Spirals are a real pain in the neck to do a graduated spiral that actually looks reasonable. Now here's one way of doing it. I'm just marking this out into quarters. So the start point for my spiral is going to be there, and then I'm going to shift 90 degrees, make a mark a quarter of the way in, shift 180 degrees, make the mark halfway in, shift 270 degrees, make a mark a quarter of the way out, that is to say 3/4 of the way in. Now as you can see, this leaves you with a bit of a problem because there's very big distances between the first two marks. You're okay sort of down this end, but at the other end not a chance in hell of getting it even remotely right. So I'm going to divide those first two into quarters again. I'm going to come halfway between. I'm going to mark it off appropriately. And that was a good guess. Having done this a few million times before. So you can now draw a reasonable spiral between all these dots. And once again, the more dots you can put in, the better your spiral is going to be. Very difficult to draw freehand spirals. Now of course small circles you can draw very easily freehand like this. And that's exactly what the great masters did. But large circles, no. Large circles, much more difficult. But it's a good idea to keep practicing drawing these curves and circles because they appear in all sorts of organic shapes. Like for example, if you're doing a pattern for material, you've got a leaf design, that will all be based on spirals and curves. And it's important to learn to draw pleasing curves that look right to the eye. And the same as with circles, with small curves, you can do them freehand easily enough. Now, it's also important to be able to draw perhaps slightly larger circles freehand and to practice drawing the largest possible circles you can freehand. And that's about as big as I would care to go freehand. It's about the size of a Mexican silver eagle, I guess, about 1 1/4 inches in diameter maybe. And the other important thing is to learn to practice shading. So you turn these circles into spheres. The way I usually do this is I decide where the highlight is going to be, and then I put a material, colour, or in this case density of pencil stroke, across the whole circle. So the whole circle turns out to be light grey. And then where the highlight is, I just rub that out. So you end up with a white spot. Then I carry on shading opposite that white spot to make it all a bit darker. Then I'll put in the darkest part, which is the furthest away, where the shadow is. And then I kind of blend the two together to create a mid-tone. And extend that mid-tone a bit further round. And in fact, very often I will take that mid-tone practically all the way around the ball. So this would just be a ball that's, say, not very shiny. kind of like it's a ball of clay or something like that. Now there's other ways of doing this shading, and you can make an object look shiny by adding reflections and adding a more dense highlight. Now because the paper is our white and the paper is the highlight, you can't make the highlight more dense. What you have to do is make the object more coloured. So I'm going to put this highlight on the other side. As you can see, I'm colouring in this ball a lot more densely. Now here I'm deliberately exaggerating these outside construction lines so you can see them on the camera. Normally I put in construction lines in something like a 4H pencil, which would just disappear on camera. Now what I've done here is I've quartered that highlight. That makes it kind of look like the reflection of a window. And now I'm going to add in the shadow area that's the furthest away from the highlight. And then if something's really shiny, it's a good idea to put something in there that's reflected, and that reflected thing's either going to have to be lighter or darker. So I'm going to put a reflection of a person in near this window, but they're going to be upside down. So it's only a very roughly drawn in little person, but it does look like a reflection, as you can see. And it's a good idea to keep practicing these sorts of techniques and to keep practicing your shading as well at the same time, because at the end of the day it's circular shapes like this and spherical shading that appears absolutely everywhere. It doesn't matter what you're going to draw. Now I hope you like this, and I hope you find it fun, and if you have, please like, subscribe, and of course share. Thank you very much.